Okay, we're being recorded
Okay,
now,
great.
just so everyone knows.
All right, let's go ahead and get this meeting started. We're gonna start with interviews for our interested applicants this evening. And I believe I'm gonna let Suzanne take over here.
Sure, thanks, Mayor Labar. As council knows, we have two applicants. We had three. One chose to withdraw their application. So we have two applicants applying to be the next city council member. We have Don DeZellum and Carol Harvey. Both are with us in the audience this evening. And I'd like to just lay out a little bit of the process. And this is with Mayor Labar's blessing. Just she's blessed this process. So we would like to have whoever is not being interviewed be sequestered. And so we'll have them sitting in the planning conference room while the other person is being interviewed. We were going to type up all of your questions and all of that, but there were so many. So we thought instead Mayor Labar will pick however she will allow you to ask the questions. If questions are appropriate, we'd like you to ask both candidates the same question, if appropriate. We understand there might be times where one question is different for another candidate than it would be for another. And then we will, when we adjourn the meeting at 7 o'clock, that's when we'll do the appointment. So we won't have that discussion until 7 o'clock during the public meeting. So now it'll just be interview time, getting to know the candidates. And then at 7 o'clock, you can have dialogue, make your motions, and we can vote. And I'll explain the voting process at 7 o'clock so everyone in attendance can hear then. When Mayor Labar and I were deciding with the city manager how this would look, we figured we'd do it alphabetical, and we would have Mr. DeZellum go first, and then we would have Miss Harvey sequestered. Are there any questions about the process from 6 o'clock to 7 o'clock? Okay, then I will bring Miss Harvey into the Planning Commission conference room. Well, she actually knows where it is very well.
And then just for council's
There you go.
clarification, I would like everyone to get the opportunity to ask one question, and we're going to move on to each council member. So make sure you take a note if you need clarification, because then I'll come back to you. But I want everybody to have time to at least get in one question each.
And we thought it would be appropriate if the candidate starts speaking and telling us why they would like to be on council and why they've applied. So if you'd like to start, Don, the floor is yours.
Thank you.
Sure. No, I have a.
It's awesome. All right, my name is Don DeZellum. Why do I want to apply for council? One, I'm involved in the city already. I have a stake in it. I regularly attend the city council meetings. I've been doing that for over the last 5 years. I've attended and graduated from the Citizens Academy. I am active on the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board. I was the co-chairman of the Parks, Open Space and Trails and Sustainability portion of the last comprehensive plan. And I also sat on the last Charter Review Committee. I've been active in community groups here in town. I was Rotarian of the Year back in, I believe it was like 1994, and helped establish the Rotary Scholarship Program up here for high school students. As most of you know, I'm very perseverant. This is not the first time I have applied nor have ran for office. And I feel I can offer a fresh new perspective to the council. So I guess I'm open to questions.
Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and start at this end, and Councilmember Neal, I'll start with you.
Don, instead of the traditional form where There are three most pressing issues listed in your opinion. I just want, what do you think is the most pressing issue for Woodland Park right now? And tell me how you would go about deciding how you would cast your vote. Or,
I would say right now, probably the
or
most,
done, let me, or go about solving the issue, whether it's a vote or another solution. I'm sorry.
okay. I would say right now, probably the most pressing thing that we need to get accomplished and move on from is the short-term rental issue. We need to get that resolved. How do we go about it? That's a good question. We seem to, as a community, tried to do it in several different ways, and so far have not found a solution that is satisfactory to everybody. I think the solution to it is going to end up being a compromise between what the short-term rental owners are looking for and what the citizens are looking for. We can't make a decision that's based too far to either side. It's going to have to be a nice, happy medium place. One of the things that I tend to be is a person that can work with a group to come to compromise, to consensus that will work for everybody. So I feel I could bring that to the table on that issue.
Thank you.
Councilmember Nakai.
So there's obviously, we all got our assessments for property taxes. So my question is, what are your thoughts on a mill levy reduction, permanent or temporary, and why, for which way you went?
As far as the mill levy adjustment issue, I would be for taking it right now and making it temporary, and then work on making it a permanent situation. Right now, it would be easier, I feel, to do a temporary reduction and get a feel, one, to let the citizen have some relief from the high rates that are coming out right now. I'm sure most of you have gotten your assessments in the mail, and give them that relief while working out what would be the best permanent solution to that, as far as what would be the appropriate reduction for a permanent reduction on the mill levy.
Councilmember Connors.
Thank you, Mayor. Hello, Don.
Hey, Frank.
Thank you for all the volunteer hours you've done, my friend. I appreciate that. My question to you is, how many citizen voices would you have to listen to change your position on any issue in front of the city council?
As many as wanted to give them to me. It's unfair to say you can make a decision based on hearing one person. The more that you hear, the more input you're going to get. And it's going to be varying from person to person, but soon you're going to find a common thread that you can look into and base a decision on.
Thank you.
Good evening, Dawn.
Hi, Kelly.
Hello. My question for you is, what do you hope to accomplish in the approximate 1 year time frame that you'll be sitting on the city council before the next election? In other words, what would be your priority or your priorities?
Well, with 1 year and what's left ahead in the events that go on in city government, probably the two biggest ones would be hopefully maybe coming up with a new short-term rental ordinance and preparing a good budget for the city for the next fiscal year.
Hi, Don.
My
question for you is, what do you think the DDA should focus on now for the future of the district?
good question. I'm still trying to wrap my head around the fact that they did something or something was done. I mean, that's been well, like 20 years in the making. Be honest with you, I haven't really given that one much thought.
That's okay. I appreciate it. I think we all feel that way. Councilmember Zulawaga.
Good evening, Don.
Hello.
The issue I want to ask you about is, we have been struggling to launch some meaningful economic development in a cohesive way in the city. So in your time here, can you give us your perspective on where we can get some forward motion in that in a collaborative way?
There needs to be a good, solid core of local business owners that are willing to work together to make the city a place that people from inside the city want to come and shop in, where people from outside want to come up, spend the day, you know, do some shopping, eat some food and go home, or spend the night and go home. I don't see, and I've seen attempts in the past where they have attempted to get together and to do that kind of a thing, but I haven't seen it come to any staying power or any fruition to it. But that would be one way to help bring it about. Another one I think that'll help is this new micro grant process for events, signature events. I think that organizations that come up with some good signature events will bring customers to the downtown and to the city for business purposes. But I think a lot of the ideas of how to build a better environment for the economic development of the businesses here in town needs to come from the business owners banding together and coming up with things like that to drive it, instead of the city coming up with events to drive it. Usually business owners will do a much better job of that than government will.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to circle back to Rusty. Do you have a second question or a follow-up question?
I really don't. I know Don and I know Carol very well, so thank you, Don.
Councilmember Nakai?
So I have a reasonably simple question, I think. Do you believe in a Christian prayer to open the city council meetings?
I would not be opposed to it. Our federal government opens in prayer, our state government opens in prayer. You know, a prayer or a moment of silence, I'd have no objection to.
Okay, Councilmember Connors?
Thank you, Mayor. One last question for me. What can you do for our city that the other candidate cannot?
I think I would bring just a total new freshness. I have not actually had an opportunity to be a participant in the decision-making part of it, other than, you know, with the comp plan and stuff where we made advisements that were brought and approved. So I think I offer that fresh outlook, you know, the fresh blood, the fresh eyes to what's been going on for the last 5 years or so.
Councilmember Case?
I have nothing else. Thank you, Don.
I don't either. Councilmember Zulawaga?
Well, you bring up a good point. I was on the Parks and Rec review with you. And talk a little bit about how you facilitated that and what you brought out in the folks in the review. And because I'll just say for myself, I saw you had some insights and some even temperedness that really moved the process along. So from your perspective, what did you see?
Basically, I let everybody discuss the section or whatever we were going over, reviewing it. And, everybody got to give their input, give their say. And when we came to a point where, we'd have 4 of us or 5 of us butting heads against each other, I would then step in and offer, okay, so this is what you're seeing is not being right or not working. And this is what you're seeing is not working. So what if we do this? I would offer them a compromise or an alternative solution to the issue that we would bring out, discuss, everybody would discuss it. And most of the time we'd end up, somebody would either change their view or even come up with a better idea than what I had. And we'd move on. And I'll tell you, we did a lot of work in that one. The consultants, I think, hated our group because we were always, we would present them with something, they would send it back to us, and we would send it back probably more redlined than what it was the first time they sent it back to us. But at the end of it, through the work of everybody in the way that we cooperated and got things done, the planning commission looked at ours and had very few questions. They were very impressed with the quality of the work that our group presented to them. So,
Well, in fairness to the consultants, we racked up a lot of volunteer hours for them, that particular group. So
yes, we did.
They got a win. Thank you, Don.
Council, anything further? Well, we can do, it's 6:20, 30. We can go to, we can do one more round. So.
Nothing.
All right, so this is going to be a little winded. Sorry. Last year you posted a quote by Francis Frangipane, I believe is how his name is pronounced, which reads, "We are at war. The very fabric of our culture has been attacked, and Christians, whom Jesus calls salt and light, are sitting passively in the darkness, blatantly unresponsive. What can we do? We can be on school boards, form committees, write letters to the editor, join Christians to protest, support godly elected leaders, organize church groups, write congressmen, pray and do spiritual warfare, and in general, take a stand on unrighteousness. This day we fight." So my question is, what do you say to those who aren't Christian? Their faith is at war with yours. How do you plan to govern those who don't share your faith?
Same way I would with somebody with faith. The whole purpose of that article or that comment was that we need to be involved. And without getting into the religious aspects of it, it's just not the church that has been sitting on their hands a lot of the time. Society tends to sit on their hands and let things that they know aren't right go by. And to me, part of being a citizen is being involved, regardless if you're a religious person or not. You need to be involved with what's going on in your town and in your city. And if things you could feel you can make an improvement, then you should go for it and participate. You should be as knowledgeable as you can about how your city works, from the government down to the departments to You know, how do the shop owners up here work? How do they operate? One of the first things I learned when I moved to town is that if you own a restaurant up here, you make your money in the summer and you bank it because you're going to need it for the winter. So involvement, being involved, not being passive and letting things happen.
Councilmember Connors? Councilmember Case? Councilmember Zulaga?
So Don, in that engagement, some would argue that council is not proactive to defend the freedoms of Americans, and that a lot of legislation and initiatives or ordinances that we are passing are just being passed down from the feds and from a state level. How would you address that in terms of being proactive, or not being proactive, just in terms of being a council member? And where do you weigh in on that?
Federal and state governments have been taking the initiative lately to pass things down to what should be the core of government, which is local government, things that should be the local government's responsibility to make laws, regulate, that type of thing. The local government needs to stand up. And it's, you run into the problem of, yeah, you can be the person who stands up and gets sued from the state or loses money that the state or the federal government may give you. I think the best word there is to be wise and choose your battles wisely in it. Where you can make a win, go for it. Where you may not be able to make a win, that's when you look for allies. Maybe 3 or 4 towns can join together if it's something that's really going to be non-beneficial to the group or to this, to a bunch of cities. But we need to stand for our rights. And you need to do it in the best way to your ability.
Thank you.
Okay, very good questions, Council. Thanks. And Don, you did an excellent job answering. I appreciate it. And I think we're going to go ahead and let you take a break, and then we'll call Carol Harvey up.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. It's over, yeah.
So, Carol, we've asked each applicant to start with stating why you are interested in being on council.
Well, I think Suzanne, I did write some notes because it gives me an opportunity to kind of calm down. Well, first, thank you for considering me to fill the vacancy that was created by the departure of Councilman Ott. And I'd like to take the opportunity now, I don't know if David's watching, to thank him for his service to his country and to the community. And I wish him well in his future endeavors. You guys have reviewed my letter of interest, and you know my background relevant to community service, probably better than my own husband does. So the bottom line is, I think I am, well, I don't think, I'm certain I can fill the service gap between Councilmember Ott's departure and the next election cycle, which is only 11 months away. I can immediately address the upcoming issues facing the community. And I wanted to make the point that I'm experienced in the budget cycle, and I'm ready to assist the city staff and the council when the new budget is presented. Although I'm sure Michael can tell you that that process started the day after the last budget was approved, I'm sure. I'm familiar with the community and the council's recent deliberations on short-term rentals, and I'm ready to listen and act if warranted
on the crucial topic. You may not be aware, but along with Planning Commissioner Lee Brown and we initiated a dialogue with the city manager and his staff about 1.5 years ago concerning STR licensing and regulations, and how as a community we could address the good and the bad and the ugly of the STR industry here in Woodland Park. I'm fully aware of the ongoing citizen initiative to present the question of STR viability to the voters, and I'm ready to support that process going forward. I'm also ready to provide context and background to the council regarding the review and the consolidation of the city's zoning and land use code. And thanks to Catherine Nakai, Councilman Nakai, and Councilman Connors, and also Councilman Zulawaga for enduring some of those mind-numbing meetings that we've gone through the last couple of months on the new definitions in the new consolidated code. It's necessary, and going forward, I think that the community will be very happy with the fact that we're going to try to make it a more accessible and more understandable code for everyone. And I'm also ready to join all of you on the dais in the next 11 months, because I know if you do select me, there's not going to be any downtime. There's not going to be a learning curve. I just offer experience and a desire to continue to build on the accomplishments that we've all made as a community to make this a better place to live. And I now stand by for your questions.
Very good. We're going to start at the opposite end. So I'm going to go ahead and start with Councilmember Zulawaga.
Good evening, Carol, and thanks for applying. My first question is, so we have been struggling to find an economic development synergy in the city, and we have not really been successful at that. So what do you see through your eyes that you would bring to that discussion, and how do you see that it could move forward?
My past experience with that particular issue, which is a challenge for the community, is that during my tenure as a planning commissioner and then as a council member, we did have an economic development office and an individual who addressed those types of challenges and opportunities. At some point in time, that position went away, and I understand now that the city is going to, or is in the process of hiring a new economic development lead. I think that's a great move, and if I were on council, I would certainly support that, and even as a taxpayer, I would support that as well.
Thank you.
Okay, my question is, what do you think the DDA should focus on now for the district's future?
First off, congratulations to the DDA for, I think, bringing the bureaucratic hurdles to an end for the TAVA project. I'm really excited about that. As a member of the community, I think that's going to be an asset. Going forward, I think we all know that the DDA has a shelf life. It will eventually expire, but before that occurs, I would really like to see the focus of the DDA at this point in paying off their bills. And I think that is something that the council has a role in. And I think that that's probably the next big step for the DDA.
Very good. Councilmember Case. Put your mic on.
Good evening, Carol. Thank you for your interest. What do you hope to accomplish in the approximate 1 year timeframe that you'll be sitting on the city council before the next election? In other words, what would be your priority or priorities?
I think my number one priority would be to assist all of you in processing the new budget. I was really pleased with the 2023 effort that all of you put together, and the fact that you were able to set aside revenue to pay off the certificate of participation on Memorial Park. That was incredible, and thank you all. I think going forward, that would be my priority, is to help make sure we spend our money wisely, and that we continue to support the priorities that you all identified last year.
Thank you.
Councilmember Connors.
Same question I asked Mr. Dunn, and thank you for serving our city for so many years and doing what you do.
You're
Appreciate it.
making me feel old. It's okay.
Well, some of us are. How many citizen voices would it take for you to change your position on any issue that's dealing with the city council or that the city council is dealing with?
Sometimes it's a single voice that has rationale behind their argument. I don't think I could quantify that, Councilman. Sometimes it's an individual, sometimes it's multiple voices. I also know from past experience that sometimes the loudest voices aren't the voices that carry the sentiment of the entire community. And it takes a while sometimes to see through that. But in answer to your question, a very simple answer is it could be one voice, it could be multiple voices.
Councilmember Nakai. Hello.
Hi.
So if we temporarily reduce the mill levy, do you think we should tap our general fund reserves, which are above 20%, to offset the lost revenue to continue to maintain city service levels? Or do you think we should cut the budget?
Having not looked at any of Michael's deliberations for the 2024 budget, I don't know that I can answer that without with any knowledge. But that is one of the risks of reducing the mill levy. Sometimes you have to make cuts. We're finding that out at the federal level as we speak. But it would depend on what budget was presented to us. And if in fact we needed to dip into, I think, what is a very healthy reserve, if it's necessary, I would support that.
Councilmember Neal.
Carol, you've seen many applications come before you in the past. And normally they ask three, what are the three issues that you see are the biggies? I'm going to save you. Just give me the number one issue you think is the biggest issue in Woodland Park, and give me your thoughts on how you would approach it.
In terms of a popular or the populist view right now, I would say that the short-term rental issue is number one in addressing right now. And it may be that the council will or will not have influence over that at this point. I want to see that process played out with the initiative that citizens are bringing forward. That's allowed by statute, that's allowed by charter, and let it play out. But going forward, the priorities that all of you identified in terms of the budget and policy last year, I think are still relevant. Number one, making sure that we retain and attract the best staff that we can. So with the best staff, we serve our constituents in a much more robust way. I was also glad to see that last year the council prioritized making sure that our fleet was upgraded, as well as some of our enterprise services as well with water and sewage. But you asked me for a single issue, and I think the one that's smacking us all in the face right now is to resolve the community's concern on short-term rentals.
Thank you.
Okay. Councilmember Zuluaga, do you have a follow-up question?
Sure. So, well, this question isn't relevant, the one I asked for Don, but let me ask you this. So we appointed you to Planning Commission. What have you learned in that process, and what has that how does that help you as we consider you for council?
Councilman, that is an excellent question. I'm a planning commission retread. You probably knew that. I chaired the planning commission several years ago. This time around, I hope I went into the position with a little more knowledge about our zoning regulations and codes. What have I learned this time around that I believe I can bring to the council is the fact that we as a community put together a new comprehensive plan. I'd been through that process before. This time around, it was much more robust. I think had much more community buy-in. And then secondly, as I mentioned before, as mind numbing as the drill is, the fact that we're going to consolidate the three titles of our code that dealt with zoning is very important. And I will bring that experience to the council. And I think this time around, that's probably my value.
Okay. Okay.
I don't have a second question. Councilmember Case. Councilmember Connors. Councilmember Nakai.
Oh.
Got a list. What do you think the city council should do with the school board and the sales tax? Pass-through sales tax?
Catherine, I appreciate that question. In 2016, some in the audience were living in Woodland Park, some of you were not, but the sitting Board of Education directors at that time, and the chief financial officer of the school district came to the council with a very compelling rationale to introduce a sales tax that would benefit the district. In that process, quite honestly, I supported it as a council member as an initiative to put on the ballot in 2016. As a taxpayer, I voted against it. But at the same time, that tax was something that became a blessing for the school district at the time. Since that time, an intergovernmental agreement was signed between the city and the school district that gave the school district the responsibility to very carefully husband those funds and had very specific areas of expense that they could be used for. In the last 18 months, the school district, brand new school district, brand new superintendent, brand new financial officer, did something that a lot of citizens were very proud and very happy to have happen, and that was the authorization of a charter school. The charter school, in their second application to be approved, asked for a per pupil distribution of that money. And in most cases, that would seem like a logical extension of the use of that tax. However, the charter school has absolutely no obligation to report on how they use it. There's absolutely no accountability or transparency. The council has an option, and I'm not going to get over the end of my skis on this. I'll let Nina comment on it if she would like to. The council can hold those that revenue, which is collected and distributed on a monthly basis, and determine if in fact the district is still using that money to the use that the voters asked it to be used for. That doesn't mean cut it off. It means sit back, review, figure out if it's being spent the way it was supposed to be spent. There are other options the council could take. The council can just stop the tax, just like they can reduce the mill levy, or they could reintroduce it for a new citizens or a new ballot initiative and put a sunset on it. But right now, I think there is a lack of transparency and accountability with the use of that money, probably not maliciously, perhaps unintentionally, but it needs to be corrected.
I do not have any other questions, Carol.
Thank you.
Okay, I allowed Catherine 3. Councilmember Zuluaga, do you have a third one?
I do have actually a fourth one, but
Four?
I'll
We'll go with 3.
I'll do my third.
For the sake
I'll
of
do my
time.
third. And my third is when I first came on the scene to apply for council, we were faced with the city, the council, and the community were faced with you quitting from council. My perspective is that's a sacred trust that you committed to the people of Woodland Park for 4 years, and you chose to not honor that. Now we are facing appointing somebody to fill a position for somebody who hasn't honored that for whatever the reasons. But the citizens, when we choose to run for office, choose to run for the term of the office. So I struggle with how it is we could justify appointing somebody who quit with somebody else who quit. And just how is that in the best interests of the citizens of Woodland Park?
I appreciate that question. It's something that I have not had an opportunity to explain in the public domain, but I will at this time. Did you serve in the military, Robert?
No.
When I took an oath of office to serve in the military, I did that knowing that I would possibly have to give my own life. I would kill for my family if the circumstances were such that I felt it was necessary. In the case of me leaving my last term of office about 6 months before it expired, we were dealing with a community issue that had become quite intense. I was asked by the mayor at the time to head up a task force to address our mule deer population. I think all of us in the room are familiar with that time in history. I had no feelings one way or the other. I knew that the deer population in the city had become pretty overwhelming. I organized a task force and assisted in writing a deer management or a deer herd management plan. Towards the end of that process, I began receiving death threats. Well, okay, that's, sometimes part of the territory. Finally, I began receiving emails to my private email address, unattributable. The police department did open an investigation to see if they could determine who had sent them. But the threat was to kill my pets. I said, we know where you walk your pets. We know where you walk every day. Wouldn't it be a shame if someone killed your pets with a bow and arrow? I had a discussion with Mayor Levy, who was a dear friend, and he said, we're just going to let this drop. We're just not going to even go forward with the deer herd management plan. This is just getting out of hand. And I was particularly frustrated in that particular moment. And I said, then I just can't serve any longer. And I said, I felt that there was a group of over 100 people that put so much effort into that deer management plan. And because he feared for my safety, he feared for the safety of my pets, my family, he wanted just to table it. And I didn't want to table it. And in that moment in time, probably a rash decision, I resigned. Going forward, I don't think that would be my mindset again.
Well, if I could meld my last question into that context of what you've just said, we are experiencing an increasing incursion from a federal and a state level into local control. And where would you stand in terms of being proactive or reactive in terms of dealing with defending the freedoms and liberties of the charter and of the citizens of Woodland Park from these ever-changing, quickly changing mandates and laws?
I think I know the topic that you're speaking of, and as an individual, I am obviously not in favor of allowing a state entity to step into our zoning protocols here in our community, our home rule community. As a council member, I would support proclamation or resolution that would address that and the feeling of the community, if in fact that is the feeling of the community. I think you and I probably feel the same, but as I've already been asked, how many voices does it take to make you change your mind? I think that the community sentiment, having lived here for over 18 years, is that we don't want someone to come in and tell us how to use our land.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you.
I see Councilmember Nakai.
I just want to be consistent and ask one question the same of each.
Oh, yeah.
Do you believe in Christian prayer to open council meetings?
I'm sorry, repeat that.
Do you believe in a Christian prayer to open council meetings?
I'll tell you right now, before every council meeting, during every council meeting, and usually after every council meeting, I made my own prayer. I'm I was raised in the Christian faith and Jesus Christ is my savior, but a Christian prayer, I don't think is appropriate. Prayer, absolutely.
Council, any further questions or follow-up? Okay, well, I think we got all our questions out. And Carol, thank you very much.
No,
for-
thank
For
you.
your answers, and council, thank you very much for your professional questions, and they're very good. I appreciate that.
So I thought maybe council could take a little break and then we can start the public meeting at 7.
Very good. Okay, we'll resume at 7 o'clock.
Might take one. Yeah.